Well, this week we make the ultimate strip set block because this week we're making a Bargello quilt block. Let's get started. So to make this block, I cut 5 2.5-inch strips by the width of the fabric. Now, I chose a blue or a cooler colorway. You can choose whatever colors you want to in this block. Cutting the fabrics 2.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric, well, that'll give you enough fabric to actually make multiple, possibly 3 or maybe even 4 blocks. I plan to actually use this strip set in a future block, so I'm gonna sew all of these by the width of the fabric. If you only want to make one block, well, you probably only need 20 inches in length, so if you only want to make one, just cut it at the fold of the fabric. Let's get this strip set sewn and let's get this block started. I got my strip set all sewn, and I'm going to take this to the ironing board and I'm going to press my seams all in the same direction. So let's get that done. So I have our strip set all sewn and I have our seam allowances all pressed in one direction. I pressed it actually to this darker blue fabric. Now, what I also did is I actually went ahead and cut off or straightened out the edges here. And before I subcut this into the strips that we need, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm actually gonna take the two ends of this. We're gonna put them right sides together. I'm gonna put those right sides together here. And we're gonna sew a 1/4 inch seam here. And essentially we're making a tube. So let's get that last seam sewn. We have a strip set tube. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this to our cutting mat and we're gonna start subcutting little, even smaller strip sets from this. So let's go to the cutting mat. After sewing my strip set together, I put the two edges right sides together and sewed a 1/4 inch all the way down. And essentially what we have here is a strip set tube. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we are gonna subcut each, or we're gonna make some subcuts here. And before we do that, we're gonna straighten up this edge here a little bit. I'm just folding this entire strip tube in half so that we can actually cut multiple pieces at the same time, because we're gonna need 2 of each cut. Let me line up the edge here, or we're gonna straighten out the edge here. Then we're gonna start at 2 inches. We're gonna cut a 2-inch piece, and then every cut thereafter, we're gonna decrease the width by a 1/4 inch. So here's my 2-inch. So I got 2 pieces of that. I'm gonna go 1 1/3. Okay, 2 1 1/3. I'm gonna shift this down for a second, and I'm gonna do a fresh cut here because I started to notice that my fabric was going a little off kilter. So I'll do a fresh cut. Fresh cut there. Then 1 1/2 to 1 1/2 inch. So here are my two 1 1/2, 1 1/4, and I'll shift this away. So here I got two 1 1/4 pieces. Now I'm gonna open up the tube again, and I only need, well, I'm gonna first of all straighten up my edge here again, because I do see that went off there. And then I'm gonna do a 1 inch cut. So straighten that up, then shift the ruler to do a 1 inch sub cut here. And as I said, all of this is all the extra fabric. So I have enough to even make a second or maybe even a third block here, but I'm just gonna put this away for a rainy day or maybe a future block. So again, here's the subcuts that I have. On these, I got two 2 inch subcuts, two 1 1 or 1 3/4 subcuts, two 1 1/2, and two 1 1/4. And on the 1 inch, which is this, I only have one. Okay, so try to keep these in order. And let's go back to the sewing machine, and we're gonna start ripping certain seams out. So on this particular block, it's actually going to be very important to keep yourself organized. So I'm actually going to take the time to lay out my strips so that I don't confuse myself later on. Here is the one strip that is cut 1 inch wide. Then next to that, I'm going to lay the two strips that are 1 1/4, both on the left side and the right side. And notice that I'm putting the same fabrics here at the top. I'm going to take the 1 1/2 inch strips, lay that next to it, and again, making sure that the same fabric is here at the top. Take the two 1 3/4 strips here, both on the left and on the right, and finally the two 2 inch strips here. Now, as a point of reference, I'm going to keep my extra fabric here just in case I get myself mixed up. So now here's what we're going to do. Find Jack, because you're going to need him today. You're going to rip certain seams so that you get a certain pattern. So on this strip set here, the first strip set here, I'm going to take that first seam out. And I'm just going to pluck the first couple there. And I can pull it apart somewhat. Remove the leftovers. Now this blue fabric, again, I'm going to always put that at the top. Take the next strip. Now you count. So this is the first one. We're going to rip the second seam, which will be this one here. We'll take this one out. that should go, whoops, did I do that right? Yep. That should go there. Hold on. Oh, see, got myself mixed up already. Took the wrong seam out. First seam is here, here's the second seam. That's gonna go here. Nope, that's right. So 1, 2, 3. One, two, three, now 4. So 1, 2, 3, and the 4 is this one here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's 5. That'll go that. Whoops. Okay, so we went from left to right and we counted the columns. Here's first column, second column, third column, fourth column, fifth column. At each of these separate columns, I counted the seams. So on the first column, I took the top seam off, which was number 1. Second column, I counted 1, 2. This is the seam that I ripped here. Third column, 1, 2, 3. Rip that seam. Fourth column, 1, 2, 3, and I flipped it over, ripped this seam. Then on the fifth column, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's the seam that I ripped. And what you basically got is a natural progression in which each of the strips start cascading in a way here. So again, here's my 1-inch strip. This will be the middle. Now, once you reach the middle, you're gonna start counting down backwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this, I'm gonna count only 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And what's gonna happen is then you're gonna get the mirror image on this side of it. So we'll put this one back there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's 4. This will be 3. So 1, 2, 3. So I'm gonna go this way. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3. This will be 2. So 1, 2. And this will be 1. So having your strips organized where you have the 1-inch strip here in the middle and then you build it outwards, that'll keep you somewhat organized so that you're not ripping the wrong seam. And of course, remember, if you're going from left to right, just like how I showed you, when you start off on the left side here, that'll be your first column, you'll rip that first seam. Then go down by, or increase it by 1, so 1, 2, you rip the second seam. When you get to the fifth column, which should be the middle, or that 1-inch wide strip, you'll start going in reverse. So you'll go 4, 3, 2, 1. And what you get is this cascading effect where it gets bigger and then it gets thinner and then it gets wider again. And that'll provide a lot of movement in this block. Now, if you just so happen to rip the wrong seam, no problem. Just sew it back together. Easy fix, right? So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this column here that's on the furthest to the right, flip this over, take it right sides together, and we're gonna sew 1/4 inch right down on this right side. Now, before we start sewing down the columns, let me let you in on a little bit of a tip here. Because I pressed all of the seam allowances in the same direction, it just so happened that when I put these right sides together, so you see how the seams are not pressed, or they're not gonna nest because the seam allowances are actually pressed within the same direction. Not a big issue. Just flip the top one down so that when you do sew it together, you'll get a nice intersection. So I'm gonna actually just shift these seams down. Now, of course, I can pin it, in which that's what I'm gonna actually do. I'm gonna pin it at each of these intersections, but I'm gonna make sure that I do nest the seams first, then put a pin in it. Okay, just flip that seam allowance down, nest the seam, and put a pin in it. Now, in the grander scheme of things, if your point doesn't exactly come out right, it's not going to be that noticeable because of how busy this particular block is. Yeah, it's not going to be visible until you point it out to someone. I can't believe we're already on block number 37. Only a few more blocks ready to go. So as I was laying out the quilt behind me again, well, that's blocks numbers 1 through 36 that's behind me. I was starting to think, well, how am I going to get all of these, or how am I going to lay out this quilt? Because, well, it's going to be a humongous quilt. And we still got 16 more blocks to go. Just trying to figure out what the layout of it's going to be. There's a few ideas that I do have, some of which I might actually lay it out as a certain shape instead of just being square. There's certain things that you can do because we got blocks of varying sizes. You know, you could actually put strips in between certain blocks to make it bigger and match other blocks or the sizes of other blocks. So, well, once we get all 52 blocks done, I'll probably put a video together. That'll be video number 53 in this whole series, to give you some ideas as to what you can do to put the entire quilt together. So I got some ideas about that. So we've asked the questions in prior episodes where we asked, what's your favorite iron? What is your favorite ruler to use? What is your favorite thread that you use? But there is one question that I oftentimes get asked, and I'm not sure what even my answer would be. You see, the question is, what style of quilts do you make? Sometimes people will respond that they only make modern quilts because they like the modern aesthetic. Some people like applique quilts. Some people are traditional quilt makers, or we call them piecers. Piecer. That just sounds funny when you say it. They like to make pieced quilts, like the style of quilting that we are doing. Now, in this 52 weeks, 52 blocks series, I'm trying to give you a variety of different styles of quilting and different styles of making certain quilt blocks. So, for example, we've done the disappearing series. We are currently doing strip sets. I am planning to do some blocks where it's applique. So just to give a good variety of blocks to do. So whenever people ask me what style of quilts do you like to make, I just say, I'm a jack of all trades, but the expert of none. Once in a while, I'll make a quilt that has a modern aesthetic to it. Or sometimes I'll do an applique quilt. Sometimes I'll just do a pieced quilt. I really want to get into collage quilting, but I just don't have the time to actually do one right now because that does take a considerable amount of time to do. It's something I would aspire to learn and to actually make one. Every time I get asked that question, what style of quilts do you make? I'm not exactly sure how to really respond to that. So let me ask that question to all of you. What style of quilts do you like to make? Are you a traditionalist? Are you a modern quilt maker? Are you a applique person? What about hand quilting? Or are you a long arm quilter where you like to make whole cloth quilts? Leave a comment down below. Let us know what type of quilter you consider yourself. Here's something I'm kind of noticing is one of the pieces actually was 2 3/4 inches big. This piece. So as you can kind of see, the seam doesn't exactly line up, but let's see if you guys don't notice that when I get the full block sewn together. I kind of got to thinking, or I'm starting to plan ahead, after this whole 52 weeks, 52 block series is finally done with, well, what's going to come next? So I'm starting to kind of plan out a block of the month, or maybe we can start doing weekly videos of other crafting things that I do. Some of you have caught me on a live session where we made some wreaths together. So there's also been live sessions or some videos where I've done ornaments. But I'm kind of curious to know, what is it that you guys want to see? Or what type of videos would you like to see? Put a comment down below and let me know if you want to continue on with like a block of the month, or would you want to see more crafting videos of other crafts that I do? Let me know in the comments section down below. Okay. Enough chit chat. Let's get this block completely done. Here is my Bargello block. My block ended up being 10 inches by 10.5. Well, that's because on one of the strips, I didn't notice this at first, but this white strip here was a little bit bigger than 2.5 inches. And so instead of cutting it and resewing the whole thing, I just left it in there. When you cut your strips, you don't necessarily have to use a 2.5 inch wide strip. You could go with strips of varying lengths, and you might not even notice that the difference is there. So play around with your strip widths, because again, you don't necessarily have to go with a 2.5 inch strip. Now, if you do use all strips widths of 2.5 inches, then your final block should be about a 10-inch square. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed making a Bargello quilt block. Now you can use this technique to make an entire quilt, It's one of those quilt tops where it looks very difficult, but the technique is actually pretty simple. So give it a try. We'll add this quilt block to our collection and call this one done. So as always, go out and create something. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications on when I upload the next video. Put a comment down below saying what you liked or maybe even what you didn't like. And join the Facebook discussion group at Treasure Heart Creations. You can post pictures of the blocks that you created or just scroll through and gather inspiration from other Treasure Heart Creation Group members. And from time to time, there are giveaways exclusively for Treasure Heart Creation Group members. So use the link in the description box below to sign up. If you're on Instagram, post pictures of the blocks that you're working on using the hashtag THC5252. Well, that's it for now. Now go out and create something.